Hello there. I'm Karim Zachary. You're watching All 24 News, world news program live from Algiers. Coming up next in our news. A magnitude of 7.1 earthquake hits the province of northern Philippines, leaving 1 killed so far. The tremors were also felt in the capital, Manila. Also coming up, EU member states agreed to reduce gas use to prevent a winter crisis in anticipation of Russia announcing more supply cuts. The end of an era in space diplomacy. Russia says it'll leave the International Space Station with plans to build its own orbiting outpost. And celebrating nearly 7 decades since the start of the Cuban Revolution, we'll look at the challenges that lie ahead for its leaders. Hello again. We begin with the Philippines earthquake, where a magnitude of 7.1 earthquake has hit the north of the country, leaving 1 killed so far. The epicenter appears to be the town of Dolores in the province of Abra. Tremors were also felt far away in the capital city of Manila, where train services have been stopped. Pictures shared on social media by local officials and residents showed some buildings collapsing into rubble, with others leaning precariously. Their windows shattered, some cars were crushed by the debris, and roads were left cracked and damaged. There were no immediate reports of casualties, then 1 was reported killed so far. People in Dolores ran outside as the earth shook. Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos assured that the public that the government will continue with the rescue missions and relief efforts.
We will continue to provide information as it comes in. As you can imagine, this situation continues to develop, and it will do so for the next few days. But I think that everything that can be done has been done. We have even anticipated the needs of those who have become victims of this very strong earthquake.
Now, European Union nations have agreed to Russian gas supplies after Russia announced another cut to deliveries. EU members agreed to voluntarily reduce gas use by 15% from August until March. Russia says the reduced output is due to a faulty gas turbine, but EU leaders accused Moscow at playing politics. Hassan Burkan with the report.
The energy ministers of the European Union, meeting in Brussels, agreed on Tuesday to reduce their gas consumption in a coordinated manner after a new drastic drop in Russian deliveries. As Russian energy giant Gazprom decided to limit supplies to the European Union through the Nord Stream 1 pipeline to 20% of capacity due to the need for maintenance of the turbine, heightening concerns that President Vladimir Putin will use gas trade to challenge the bloc's opposition to the special military operation in Ukraine. Each country will do everything possible to reduce between August 2022 and March 2023 its gas consumption by at least 15% compared to the average of last 5 years over the same period.
Today we are sending a strong signal, not only to Vladimir Putin, who once again failed to divide the European Union, but most importantly to our citizens. Today's decision ensures we will not have to face dramatic consequences in winter, including gas scarcity or the price spikes.
In the event of risk of serious shortage, an alert mechanism will make the 15% reduction binding for the 27, but this objective will be adopted to the needs of each country. Ukraine's energy minister also participated in the extraordinary European Union meeting on winter gas supplies in Brussels and expressed his country's support for the new deal.
We have experience with Russian Numerous times Ukraine was cut off supply of gas in the middle of winter, and this several time experience we managed to survive. We need to stop demand on Russian gas, and we need to do this as quickly as we can.
European Union countries seek to maintain a solid front over a conflict that shows no sign of ending. They believe that the new decisions would enable the blocs as a whole to get through the winter should Russia stop all gas deliveries. If European countries don't have enough supplies stored up in time, it means certainly almost. It will be a struggle to heat homes and power cities.
Russia has launched more missile strikes on Ukraine's Black Sea coast. The rockets hit the village of Zatuka in the Odessa region. President Volodymyr Zelensky says it's a residential area with no military assets. The eastern city of Kharkiv is also targeted. Russia destroyed 8 arms depots in Ukraine's Mykolaiv, Donetsk regions, according to Defense Ministry.
Operational, tactical, and army aviation and missile forces and artillery continue to strike at military facilities in Ukraine. 8 depots of rocket and artillery weapons and ammunition in areas of the settlements Kolbakien, Yevkien of the Mykolaiv region, Bakhmutsky, Yakovlevkia, and Zaitsvy of the Donetsk People's Republic have been destroyed.
Russia's new space chief signaled on Tuesday his country's intention to withdraw from the International Space Station after 2024. But a senior NASA official said Moscow has not communicated its willingness to pull out of the 2-decade-old orbital partnership with the United States. More in this report.
Yuri Borisov, Russia's newly appointed space chief, while on a meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin, claimed that Russia will fulfill its obligations to its partners before it leaves the project.
As you know, we are working within the framework of the international cooperation on the International Space Station. Of course, we will fulfill all our obligations to our partner, but the decision to leave after 2024 has been taken. I think that by this time, we will begin to form a Russian orbital station.
Russian space agency Roscosmos even released an image of its proposed new space station. However, NASA's ISS director Robin Gerens said that Russians have communicated no such intention, as required by the Intergovernmental Agreement on the station. The United States has expressed regrets over Russia's decision to pull out from the International Space Station after 2024. If Russia does stop sending cosmonauts to the ISS, it would mark an end to an era of space diplomacy. U.S. State Department spokesman Ned Price said Washington has been taken by surprise.
It plans to leave the International Space Station after 2024. It's an unfortunate development given the critical scientific work performed at the ISS.
A football field-sized orbital laboratory, some 400 kilometers or 250 miles above Earth. The station counts Canada, Japan, and the European Space Agency as other key partners. But Russia and the US are regarded as the outpost's core stakeholders. Russian thrusters control the station's position, while an American power grid keeps the outpost running. Officials had been working on keeping the partnership in place through 2030. And earlier this month, Russia and the US agreed to resume sharing astronaut flights to the ISS.
The International Monetary Fund is predicting a slowdown in the global economy. In its latest report, the IMF projects that growth will slow to just 3.2% this year. Higher food and energy prices, partly brought on by the war in Ukraine, along with supply chain bottlenecks, which are also expected to push global inflation up to around 8.3%. That's higher than previously projected. In the world's 7 leading economies, the IMF says the probability of a recession is now estimated to be nearly 15%. That's 4 times higher than usual. The IMF says while the outlook is looking so bad, there are measures that countries can take to mitigate the worst impact.
Now, we're not there. Inflation expectations have remained quite stable, and this is one of the great benefits of having had decades of low inflation environment and credibility by central banks. So if we were to get in this new environment of high inflation expectations, this would be a world in which central banks have lost the plot. And it would be very, very difficult to walk that back. So we don't think central banks should wait until we get there before bringing inflation back down.
Central bank data showed on Wednesday that South Korea's inflation expectations hit a record high in July amid rising energy and commodity costs, while consumer confidence fell to its lowest level in 21 months. Expected inflation, an index measuring consumer price inflation over 12 months, reached 4.7%, the highest level since 2008. Moving on to a different topic now, Kenyans will head to the polls in 2 weeks to vote for their next president. A televised debate was held in the capital Nairobi on Tuesday, but only half of the candidates took part. Sufyan Kanturi with the report. Seems that we're having a technical problem with the report. We'll get back to it a little later. The final two contenders for the Prime Minister's job in the UK had to abruptly end the debate after an unfortunate turn of events.
Of food bills. What we need to make sure is that people are keeping more on families through national insurance.
What's morally wrong is asking our children and grandchildren to pick up the tab for the bills that we're not in this country, just the top 10% of country.
He's going to challenge the freedom and democracy.
Well, as you followed, the Conservatives Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak were debating on live TV when the House collapsed. Kate McCain fainted midway through the event. Producers later issued a statement saying she's now recovered. The rest of the debate was cancelled. The two Conservative Party leadership candidates, Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss, met face-to-face in the first debate or televised debate that was earlier before this one. The pair are battling to succeed Boris Johnson, who quit as leader of the ruling Conservative after months of ethics scandals triggered.
Will be our next Prime Minister.
A debate starting with smiles turned into angry glances and disagreements on the stage.
If we follow Rishi's plans, we are headed for a recession.
Can we really get an answer to this?
The two contenders to succeed British Prime Minister Boris Johnson, Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss, met side by side last evening for a first duel on TV. Both opposed over the questions of taxes and the cost of living crisis.
As the situation changes on the ground, I'm always going to respond to support people through it. But that's just about the short term. I think it's also worth us taking a moment to think, well, how do we solve this problem in the long term?
I would reverse the increase in national insurance. We promised not to raise it in our manifesto in 2019. The people here who voted Conservative for the first time expect us to fulfil our promises.
How to take over from Boris Johnson, such an extravagant and popular personality within the Conservative Party. Neither Liz Truss nor Rishi Sunak have a charisma compared to that of Boris Johnson. The televised debates have shown it well. And even before taking office, already a difficulty arises.
It was acknowledged that China is a threat to our national security, it's a threat to our economic security.
Rishi Sunak's reference to China seems to have angered Beijing.
I would like to urge certain British politicians not to make an issue out of China or its so-called China threat, because such irresponsible remarks will not help them to solve their own problems.
But despite the row of attacks dominated the early exchanges, the pair were on a better terms by the end of the debate.
Do you work together in government?
Of course I would.
Okay.
One or the other will have to convince the members of the Conservative Party that they are the most competent to take the lead of the Tory party, and above all, the office of the Prime Minister.
Kenyans will head to the polls in 2 weeks to vote for their next president. A televised debate was held in the capital Nairobi on Tuesday, but only half of the candidates took part. Sufyan Kanturi.
With less than 3 weeks left before Kenyans head to the polls to elect their new president, William Ruto, the deputy president of Kenya, has made it clear that he wants to be the country's next leader. Despite the fact that Raila Odinga, his primary opponent in the next elections, did not attend the debate for the position, he only focused exclusively on battling corruption.
But on my side, I've said that even if it's my son, even if it's my brother, my sister, if they are found to be corrupt, they will face the music.
There are 4 candidates running. The 2 leading candidates, Ruto and Raila, were scheduled to debate each other. But Raila chose not to participate, which prompted Ruto to break his silence and make a speech about that.
My competitor is not here because he doesn't have a plan. He doesn't have an agenda. He cannot articulate anything to the people of Kenya. That's why he's not here. Secondly, my competitor is not here because he doesn't want to answer difficult questions. You know, he's been part of this administration, the handshake administration, for the last 5 years.
They both held senior roles in previous governments in which borrowing grew and stealing of public funds with widespread. This debate was meant to give voters a chance to find out more.
The government of Democratic Republic of Congo has condemned the violence that has happened at UN peacekeeping bases in the east of the country. Since Monday, protesters have stormed UN facilities. The violence resulted in the deaths of demonstrators and UN personnel, and the UN deputy representative for DRC is calling for an investigation.
Update from the Democratic Republic of the Congo, where violence against our peacekeeping mission is continuing to escalate. At the MONUSCO Butembo base today, violent attackers snatched weapons from Congolese police and fired upon our uniformed personnel. Sadly, 1 military peacekeeper and 2 UN police personnel were killed, and another was injured. We add our voice to the acting head of MONUSCO, Kassim Dieng, to condemn the killing of our colleagues and to express our deepest sympathy to their families and colleagues.
And for more on the violence, let's follow this report by Zahra Farjani.
At least 5 people have been killed in Goma and around 50 others injured in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo on the second day of protests against the United Nations mission, accused of ineffectiveness in its fight against the armed groups. The military and the police have been called in to help to contain the situation. The trouble began on Monday after a logistic base was attacked. People threw stones, looted office equipment and other material. This is what was left after it was ransacked. Other UN bases have also been targeted.
What is happening is that the population is tired with the presence of MONUSCO doing absolutely nothing. That is what is happening. The population is very angry with MONUSCO, which has been in the country for 22 years now, and there is no favorable outcome.
The relationship between some Congolese and the UN has been tense at best. The protesters said the UN has failed to protect them from frequent attacks. The UN peacekeeping mission in Democratic Republic of Congo has had a presence here for more than 20 years. Despite these, more than 100 rebel groups in the east control a region that is rich in minerals.
They say they have a program to restore peace in Congo, but since they arrived, blood has not stopped flowing in Fizi, in Rutshuru, even here in Goma, in Ituri, in Beni, and everywhere. The blood of our compatriots continue to flow wherever MONUSCO is.
People in Goma are fleeing again to safer areas until the situation gets better. Many Congolese say they are tired, they want peace, and if the UN cannot provide stability, then its forces need to leave.
During a meeting in Yaoundé, French President Emmanuel Macron and his Cameroonian counterpart Paul Biya discussed the conflict in Ukraine, Russia's involvement in Africa, and the necessity of investing in agriculture to combat the global food crisis. This visit is seen as strengthening bilateral cooperation for France at a time when Russian officials have also been traveling to African nations in an effort to gain support.
Cette présence russe
The difficulties of supply in the context of inflation, which was partly due to uncoordinated global recovery but which was largely aggravated by the war launched by Russia in Ukraine, is not sparing Africa, not the Middle East and Europe, and even thought we are only just emerging from the crisis of COVID-19. This conflict is a direct test of our economy, and yours in particular.
Firefighters in the U.S. say they are making progress in battling California's biggest wildfire this year. Nearly a quarter of the blaze near Yosemite National Park is now contained. The Oak Fire started burning on Friday and has destroyed an area half the size of San Francisco. Thousands of people have been moved from their homes. 41 buildings were destroyed. Heat wave and long-term drought conditions have fueled the blaze.
You take that moisture out of the vegetation, you have these volatile conditions, and that's really what's driving this fire. The fire is moving more to an unpopulated area, so that's good news for the residents. Bad news is it's getting in more of an inaccessible area, so it's challenging for us to get in there. There's not a lot of roads.
Nearly 500 firefighters have been deployed to contain a wildfire in southern France. Heat waves and extremely dry summer season are driving the fast-moving blaze. At least 500 hectares to forests of forest and vineyards have been destroyed. The government has placed water restrictions in nearly all the country's regions as rivers and reservoirs run low. Cuba is marking its 69th year since the start of communist uprising that eventually led Fidel Castro to seize in power. But it's a bittersweet anniversary for most Cubans as the nation faces its worst economic crisis in 3 decades. Islam said.
Thousands gathered at the Plaza Cultural in the central province of Cienfuegos in Cuba to celebrate the 69th anniversary of the start of Fidel Castro's revolution. Such gathering was impossible over the last 2 years due to COVID-19 outbreak. President Miguel Díaz-Canel used the occasion to blame the island's economic crisis on the siege imposed by the United States 6 decades ago.
In the midst of deep shortage of so many years, under the suffocating pressures of a war economy, because there is an economy under blockade, we have never renounced the socialist aspirations to benefit all by offering multiple possibilities for human fulfillment.
The ceremony has also coincided with a moment of tension for Cubans on the island who are stressed because of power blackouts, of which is making life difficult in the middle of the stifling summer. While Cuba is experiencing high levels of migration from the island, Díaz-Canel continues to argue that the United States economic embargo is the root of all Cuba's woes. An increase in the United States sanctions has created a shortage crisis of food and medicine, which is causing long queues to obtain products.
Although we are in the middle of a blackout mixed with the stifling summer of these days, some may think that nothing is worse than the wave of negative events we are experiencing and seeking relief by cursing. At the bottom of their soul, they all understand that, apart from inefficiency, the blockade is at the root, in the trunk, in the branches, and in the fruits of our economic difficulties.
In the meantime, Díaz-Canel recognized the difficulties the Cubans are currently facing, but assured that social justice continues to be the guide of the government's actions and promised an economic reactivation plan to counter acute shortages of food supplies and energy. He ended the ceremony with the traditional thought increasingly questioned, cry of socialism and fatherland or death.
President Abdelmadjid Tebboune honored at the People's Palace the first outstanding students in the baccalaureate and intermediate educational certificates for the June 2022 session. During this annual tradition, which was hosted by the People's Palace, President Tebboune awarded the top 3 achievers with gold, silver, and bronze medals.
شعبة تقني رياضي هندسة الطرائق من ولاية الطارف.
Tunisia's Electoral Commission has confirmed preliminary results suggesting a new constitution will be approved. 95% of those who voted on Monday's referendum back the reforms proposed by President Qais Said, but the turnout was very low. Only about 28% of registered voters turned up. The constitutional changes will give Said extra powers. A senior UN official told the Security Council today that despite the formation of a roadmap to get Libya closer to crucial presidential election, the nation is still mired in a dangerous atmosphere caused by dismissal, economic conditions, protest, and skirmishes between armed factions. The council was briefed by Marta Ama Akyapobi, Assistant Secretary General for Africa. And with this, ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the end of our news program. Thank you for tuning in to our channel. Bye for now.